All right, I went and saw Suzume last night, the new anime movie. Well, new in America. Came out a few months ago in Japan. And I thought it was going to be a rom-com just because of the guy who made it. And it was pretty much an action movie with a romance element. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun movie and it was a cool concept. The movie is about a girl, Suzume, obviously, from the title. And if you've seen the preview, it looks like it's going to be a rom-com about her and this guy Sota with this weird interdimensional door thing. And there is that element to it, but it went a way different direction than I thought it would. So what the movie is actually about is Suzume is biking to school. She's a pretty normal girl. She was raised by a single mom. Her mom got killed in a tsunami because they live near the coast. And when she was a kid, she walked through this door into like another dimension, and then she was able to make it back out, and her aunt found her and adopted her. So she's biking to school. She passes this guy with long hair who's like, "Hey, are there any ruins nearby?" And she's like, "Yeah, over there, like on the mountainside." So she kind of ignores it, goes to school, and then decides to go back, goes to the ruins, and in the middle of the ruins is a door, and the door is connected to nothing. It just is a door in the middle of like kind of an auditorium sized room full like with some water that's like knee deep. So she tries to go through the door because when she opens it, she can see this other dimension. But when she steps through it, she just walks through it, and then the dimension, she can still see it through the door. So she jumps back and forth a few times, can't figure it out. Picks up this little statue. It's a cat. The cat is really cold, and it comes to life and then runs off. So she's like, I don't know what the hell is going on. And she goes to school. So while she's at school, back where the door is, she sees this big black tube thing in the distance, and it looks like smoke. But none of her friends can see it. So she freaks out, bikes all the way back to the ruins, and when she gets there, the guy that asked her about the ruins is there trying to shut the door. And he's like, "What are you doing? It's dangerous. Get away." So the worm falls and it causes an earthquake. And it's only like a 3.0, which, for those of you who don't know, is not really a big deal. Oklahoma gets thousands of those a year. That's kind of size wise where you're at. Like you would feel it a little bit, but there wouldn't really be any damage. I mean, unless you were in a super rundown place. She helps this guy push the door closed, and then he does like a little chant and puts a key in it and seals it. So she's like, asking him questions, what's his deal, whatever. And he explains to her that these worms come through and cause destruction in the form of earthquakes. So his job is he's called a closer. So he closes these doors by remembering like the spirits of the people who used to live in these abandoned places, and then seals the door off, and the worms can't get through. And she goes to bandage him up at her house, and he's sitting on a kid's chair with three legs. The cat that we saw run away from her, that used to be a statue, runs up to them in the window and starts talking. And the cat is pissed off at the closer guy because it turns out that the cat was the seal, and the closer guy wants to turn him back into the seal. And the cat's like, "No, I'm alive. Fuck you." So the cat, who gets called Daijun for the rest of the movie, curses him and turns him into her kid chair, which has three legs. So from this point on, he's like a talking chair that walks around. And the main plot is that she is trying to find this cat to seal these gates off and going from place to place. And her aunt's freaking out, like, "Why are you running away from home? Did you run away with some guy?" So her aunt, after a couple of days of this, starts pursuing her based on her credit card purchases and whatever. And that's the gist of the movie. So eventually what we find out is that the curse that the cat put on the guy, and this is pretty big spoilers from here on out. So we find out that the curse that Daijun put on Sota, who's the guy, was making him become the next seal to keep this, like, these worms in place from this other dimension. You know, eventually there's this giant worm because there's two seals, and since one of the seals is missing, they can't keep this giant worm at bay in the other dimension. So it comes out in Tokyo and it's massive. And this is a pretty cool scene where this really good music, if you want to look it up, it's called Sky Over Tokyo, is playing. And these people were just doing like their day-to-day thing as Suzume is riding up with Sota on this giant worm that's over the city. And this is a really cool scene because this worm is like by far the biggest one of the movie. It's like dwarfing Tokyo. And if she doesn't use Sota as the seal to force it back into its own dimension, it's going to kill millions of people. So obviously she does. Daijan the cat saves her because she falls after she kills the worm. And then she's pretty upset because her and Sota spent all this time together. You know, obviously she's in love with him. So she has to figure out how to get him back into human form and make him not be the seal anymore, while also not letting this giant worm destroy everything. She goes to Sota's grandpa, and he tells her that she has to go through the first gate that she ever went through. So then she goes to Sota's place, runs into his friend. Her aunt finally catches up with her. They all ride back to the door she went through as a kid. She goes through. Daijan and this other cat, who has a name that I can't pronounce, who's the other seal, go through with her. They fight the giant worm thing. She is able to wake Sota up with the help of Daijan, the cat, who had kind of betrayed her because obviously he's the one who made Sota the seal to begin with. And then her and Sota use the two cats, kill the giant worm in the other dimension, and then go back through. And you get kind of a relatively happy ending. She goes back to finish out as a senior in high school. She's 17. I think Sota's supposed to be 21. So he goes back to finish up his senior year of college. And he says that he'll come back for her, you know, once he's finished up what he needs to with his degree. And that essentially his family line is going to keep closing the gates, but they can't make a living off of it. It's just kind of something they had to do quietly on their own to save people. And yeah, that's the gist of the movie. I really enjoyed it. If you've seen this guy's movies before, he did Your Name and Weathering with You, and he's done a few other ones. I'll try not to butcher his name. Makoto Shinkai is his name. So yeah, if you've seen his other stuff, the girl looks just like his other main girl in Your Name does. The art style is very similar. There's a lot of really nice skies and really good music. And yeah, it's a really just enjoyable movie. Pretty straightforward. Probably could have used a little bit of fleshing out with some of the dynamics of how this shit works, but not a huge deal. I still enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend going to see it. And of course, I think it's only in theaters this weekend, so you might have to wait for it to come on Crunchyroll. But yeah, it's a really fun movie, a solid action movie. And it's one of those things where I'm glad that I went to the theater for it. I don't really have too much to say about it. I mean, it was a really just simple, good movie. So hopefully you can go watch it and enjoy it yourself. All right, thanks. See ya.